The morning sun rose over New Seoul, casting long shadows across the clean streets of the government district. The year was 2157, and Earth had changed a lot since joining the Galactic Union 30 years ago. Tall buildings with curved glass stood next to older structures. Flying cars moved between them like busy insects. Ji-soo Kim woke up early. Today was the most important day of her life. At 17, she was the youngest person ever chosen to represent Earth to the aliens of the Galactic Union. Ji-soo smiled as she got out of bed, her neural implant helping her move her legs. She had been born with a rare condition that made walking difficult, but the implant helped her move almost normally. Ji-soo, breakfast is ready, her mother called from downstairs. Coming, Mom. Ji-soo called back. She looked in the mirror and saw her reflection. Dark skin, short curly hair, and bright brown eyes that her father said could charm even the grumpiest alien diplomat. Her Korean-Nigerian parents had always told her she was special, but now the whole world knew it too. Ji-soo carefully made her way downstairs, where her parents waited. Today's the big day, her father, Dr. Da Kim, said with pride in his voice. He was a well-known scientist who studied alien biology, meeting the president, and then off to represent us among the stars. Her mother, Dr. Sun Kim, a professor of interspecies communication, placed a bowl of rice and vegetables on the table. Eat well. You'll need your strength. I'm so nervous, Ji-soo admitted, picking up her chopsticks. What if I say something wrong to President Han? What if I embarrass Earth in front of the whole galaxy? Impossible, her mother said firmly. You were chosen because you understand people, human and alien alike. That's a rare gift, Ji-soo. After breakfast, Ji-soo dressed in her formal clothes, a simple blue suit made of a special fabric that shimmered slightly, a gift from the Tellurian ambassador after Ji-soo had helped solve a cultural misunderstanding that almost led to a diplomatic crisis. Your neural implant all charged? Her father asked, always the practical one. Ji-soo nodded, touching the small device behind her ear. The implant sent signals to help control her leg movements and balance. It also recorded everything she experienced, a feature that would help her remember all the important diplomatic meetings in her future. I'll be at the government complex early, Ji-soo told her parents. President Han's office said he wants to meet me alone first, before the official ceremony. Her parents hugged her goodbye. We are so proud, her mother whispered. Across town, Officer Ta Park started his morning shift with a large cup of coffee. At 32, he was a 10-year veteran of the New Seoul Police Department. The job had changed a lot since aliens started visiting Earth regularly. Now officers had to know the basic laws and customs of at least 5 different alien species. Park, you're on government district patrol today, his supervisor announced during the morning briefing. Ta nodded. He didn't love guard duty, but at least it was usually quiet. He checked his standard-issue stun gun and the more powerful plasma pistol that officers only carried in sensitive areas like the government district. Any special events today? Tai asked a colleague as they headed to their patrol cars. Some big diplomatic thing this afternoon. Presidents coming in from the capital. Extra security everywhere. Ta sighed. That meant more work and more stress. Ever since the attempted assassination of the Galactic Union ambassador 3 years ago, security around government officials had become extremely tight. As Ta drove toward his patrol area, his car's communication system beeped. All units near the government complex, we have reports of suspicious activity near the east entrance. Possible unauthorized access. Ta pressed the response button. Officer Park responding. I'm 2 minutes away. Ji-soo arrived at the government complex an hour early. She wanted time to collect her thoughts before meeting President Han. The building was massive, a blend of traditional Korean architecture and modern alien-influenced design, with a large garden surrounding it. Instead of going through the main entrance where crowds of officials and journalists were already gathering, Ji-soo went to the east side entrance. President Han's assistant had sent her special access codes for this door to avoid the crowds. Jisoo approached the security panel and entered her code. The door unlocked with a soft click, and she stepped inside. The hallway was empty and quiet. Everyone was probably preparing for the main event at the central hall. She checked the directions on her communication device. "Third floor, room 312, she muttered to herself, walking toward the elevator. Her neural implant sometimes made her movements look jerky or unusual when she was nervous, and today she was very nervous. Ty parked his car and rushed toward the east entrance of the government complex. Security cameras had detected someone entering, but no scheduled personnel were expected through that door for another 2 hours. "This is Officer Park. I'm at the east entrance now," he reported into his communication device. "Proceed with caution. Security system shows one person has entered. No identification verified." Todd drew his stun gun and entered the building carefully. The hallway was empty, but he could hear footsteps ahead. He moved quietly, following the sound. Turning a corner, he saw someone at the elevator. A young person with dark skin, making strange, jerky movements. They were looking at some kind of device in their hand. "Stop. Police," Ta called out, pointing his stun gun. "Identify yourself." Jisoo was startled by the sudden shout. She turned quickly, her implant causing her movement to be more abrupt than she intended. She saw a police officer pointing a weapon at her. "I'm Jisoo Kim," she said, trying to stay calm. "I have authorization to be here. I'm meeting President Han." The officer looked suspicious. "Show me your authorization slowly." Jisoo nodded and reached for her communication device to display her access codes. Her hand moved in a sudden, jerky way as her implant adjusted to her stress levels. Tai saw the sudden movement toward what could be a weapon. His training kicked in. In that split second, all he registered was a suspicious person making a threatening move in a restricted government area on a day the president was visiting. He switched from his stun gun to his plasma pistol and fired. The blue energy beam hit Jisoo in the chest. She looked shocked, her eyes wide with disbelief, before collapsing to the floor. Her communication device clattered beside her. Tae rushed forward, suddenly filled with doubt. The person looked so young. He checked for vital signs, but found none. The plasma shot had been fatal. He grabbed the fallen device and saw official presidential authorization codes on the screen. Horror washed over him as he realized his terrible mistake. His communication device buzzed urgently. "All officers be advised. Presidential motorcade arriving at East Entrance in 2 minutes. Youth Ambassador Jisoo Kim is already inside, awaiting the president's arrival." Tai felt the blood drain from his face. With shaking hands, he pressed his emergency button. "Officer needs assistance. East Entrance hallway. Medical emergency." Repeat, medical emergency. But he knew it was too late. 3 minutes later, President Han Sung walked into the hallway, surrounded by security personnel. He was a tall, distinguished man in his 60s, known for his calm presence. But when he saw the scene before him, his calm shattered. "Jisoo," he shouted, pushing past his security to kneel beside the fallen girl. "What happened? Someone explain." Ta stood against the wall, his face ashen. "Sir, I thought she was an intruder." She made a sudden movement. One of the president's security team was checking Jisoo's neural implant. "Sir, the implant is still recording." It captured everything. President Han looked up at Tai, his face a mask of controlled fury and grief. "Do you know who she was, officer?" Tai swallowed hard. "The youth ambassador, sir." "Not just any ambassador," President Han said, his voice breaking slightly. "The most gifted diplomatic mind we've discovered in a generation. The Galactic Union specifically requested her. She was going to represent all of humanity." The president stood slowly. "And you shot her because her neurological condition made her movements seem threatening to you." The words hit Ta like physical blows. On the floor between them, Jisoo's communication device displayed a photo of her with her parents, all smiling proudly. Outside, the sounds of news vehicles arriving filled the air. Within minutes, the story would spread across Earth and then to the stars beyond. A human police officer had fatally shot a disabled black teenager who was about to become humanity's brightest diplomatic star. And the consequences were only beginning. The news of Jisoo's death spread faster than a wildfire. Within hours, everyone on Earth knew what had happened. Video from security cameras showed the shooting from multiple angles. The footage from Jisoo's neural implant showed her final moments through her own eyes. People across the world watched in horror as a nervous teenage girl was shot for simply reaching for her phone. Sun and Dae Kim were at home preparing for their daughter's big ceremony when 2 police officers and a government official came to their door. "Mr. and Mrs. Kim," the official said, her voice shaking slightly, "there has been an incident involving your daughter." The world stopped for Sun and Dae in that moment. Sun collapsed into a chair while Dae stood frozen, unable to process the words that followed. Jisoo was mistakenly shot by a police officer at the government complex. "I'm deeply sorry to inform you that she did not survive." Later, they couldn't remember how they got to the hospital or the hours they spent sitting beside their daughter's body. The president himself had come, tears in his eyes, offering apologies that felt as empty as the space Jisoo had left in the world. Todd Park sat alone in a small room at the police station. His badge and weapons had been taken. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. Over and over, he replayed the moment in his mind, the sudden movement, his quick decision, the look of shock on the girl's face. "Officer Park," his captain said, entering the room. "The chief wants to see you." Ta followed numbly. In the chief's office, several grim-faced officials waited. "Park, you're suspended without pay, effective immediately," the chief said. "Criminal charges are being considered. The prosecutor will decide soon." One of the officials stepped forward. "The diplomatic fallout is severe. The Galactic Union has called an emergency meeting. Earth's standing as a member is under review." Tae could barely focus on their words. All he could see was Jisoo's face. All he could think was, "I killed an innocent girl." When he left the station, reporters swarmed him. Cameras flashed. People shouted questions. Someone threw something that hit his shoulder. "Murderer," a voice called out from the crowd. Todd pushed through and ran to his car. As he drove home, digital billboards throughout the city showed Jisoo's face, the bright, hopeful face of the girl who was supposed to represent humanity to the stars, not become a symbol of humanity's deepest flaws. At the presidential palace in the capital, President Han faced the most difficult speech of his career. Cameras broadcast his words to Earth and beyond, to the thousands of alien worlds that made up the Galactic Union. "Today, we have failed not just as a nation, but as a species," President Han began, his usually strong voice subdued. "Jisoo Kim was the best of us, brilliant, kind, and able to bridge differences between beings who had evolved on completely different worlds." He paused, collecting himself. "I had the privilege of working with Jisoo over the past year. She helped negotiate peace between the Arcturus Coalition and the Rigel Confederacy, a diplomatic achievement that seasoned negotiators couldn't accomplish in decades. And today, she was killed because her neurological difference made her movements seem threatening to someone who should have been trained to recognize and respect such differences." The president looked directly into the camera. "But there is something you should know about Jisoo Kim. Something remarkable." In a secure medical facility beneath the government complex, a team of human doctors and alien specialists gathered around Jisoo's body. Among them was Director Xalon, a tall, blue-skinned being from a distant world called Lumina. The neural implant preserved her consciousness. Xalon explained to the group, "Human technology created the implant, but it uses principles similar to our consciousness preservation devices. So her mind, her memories, her personality, everything is still there," asked Dr. Mira Lee, Earth's leading neuroscientist. "Correct," Gzalan said. But the preservation is temporary. We have perhaps 48 Earth hours before the pattern degrades. The human doctors looked at each other. What are you suggesting? Dr. Lee asked. Gzalan gestured to a container at the center of the room. Inside was what looked like a sleeping human, but not quite. The skin was too perfect, the features too symmetrical. We have developed android bodies that can host consciousness. On my world, we use them when our natural bodies fail. We have never attempted this with a human consciousness, but it is possible. Sun and Dai Kim sat in a private room, trying to comprehend what President Han and the alien specialists were telling them. You're saying our daughter could live again? Sun asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Not exactly, Director Gzalan said gently. Her biological body cannot be saved. But her consciousness, the essential Jisoo, could continue in an android form. Would she be human? Dai asked, his scientist's mind struggling to grasp the ethical implications. She would be Jisoo, Gzalan replied. But different. The android body has capabilities beyond human limits. She would look human, feel emotions, have her memories, but she would also be something new. What would Jisoo want? Sun asked, looking at her husband. President Han spoke softly. I knew your daughter well enough to say that she embraced change and new perspectives. It's what made her an extraordinary diplomat. Day nodded slowly. She always said the future belongs to those willing to evolve. Outside the government complex, people gathered by the thousands. Some held candles. Others carried signs with Jisoo's face and messages demanding justice. Similar scenes played out in cities across the world. A group of young people with various disabilities led one of the largest gatherings. Jisoo was one of us, a speaker told the crowd. She was killed because her different way of moving was seen as threatening. How many of us live in fear of the same judgment every day? The protests were peaceful but powerful. They grew larger as alien representatives from the Galactic Union joined, showing solidarity that transcended species. In his small apartment, Ta Park watched the coverage on his screen. He had received dozens of death threats. His family had gone into hiding. His lawyer had told him to prepare for a long prison sentence. Tai turned off the screen and opened his drawer. Inside was his service weapon from his days as a rookie officer. He stared at it for a long time, contemplating how quickly life could end. Jisoo's, his own. His communication device buzzed with a message from an unknown sender. Tai almost ignored it, but something made him look. The message read, Officer Park, this is President Han. We need to talk about redemption. In the medical facility, Sun and Dai made their decision. Yes, Sun told Director Gzalan. If there's a chance to preserve any part of our daughter, we want to take it. The procedure would take 24 hours. Success was not guaranteed. But as the medical team prepared, something unexpected happened. News leaked about the possible resurrection of Jisoo Kim. Public reaction was mixed. Some called it an abomination. Religious leaders debated the ethics. Scientists argued about the definition of humanity. But most surprisingly, the Galactic Union's High Council announced that regardless of the outcome, they would not revoke Earth's membership. The tragedy of Jisoo Kim has revealed humanity's flaws. The Council's statement read, but the response, the peaceful protests, the critical self-examination, and the willingness to embrace a radical solution also reveals humanity's extraordinary capacity for growth. This is why Earth remains valuable to our galactic community. As doctors and alien specialists work to transfer Jisoo's consciousness, protests continued. Politicians promised reforms. Training programs for police were scrutinized and overhauled. The public demanded change, and for once, those in power seemed to be listening. In his office, President Han prepared a new speech. This one would announce either a miracle or a final goodbye. And somewhere between life and death, between human and machine, between Earth and the stars, Jisoo Kim waited to find out what she would become. 24 hours passed like years for Sun and Da Kim. They waited in a small room near the medical facility, barely speaking, just holding hands and watching the clock. Sometimes a doctor would come with an update, using words they couldn't fully understand despite their own scientific backgrounds. The consciousness transfer is proceeding as expected. Neural patterns remain stable. The android integration shows promising signs. Outside the facility, the world held its breath too. News channels showed nothing but Jisoo's story. People shared memories of her, teachers who remembered her brilliant mind, friends who spoke of her kindness, alien diplomats who told how she had changed their view of humans. President Han had not left the government complex. He canceled all other duties, focusing solely on what was happening in the medical facility below. The fate of Earth's relationship with the Galactic Union might depend on the outcome, but more importantly, he had promised Jisoo's parents that he would be there for them. At exactly the 24-hour mark, Director Xalon emerged from the medical facility. The tall blue alien looked tired, even though humans couldn't easily read luminant expressions. The procedure is complete, Xalon told the Kims and President Han. Jisoo's consciousness has been successfully transferred to the android body. Did it work? Sun asked, her voice breaking. Is she alive? Her consciousness is active, Xalon replied carefully, but she needs time to adjust. This transition is unprecedented for a human mind. Can we see her? Dai asked. Xalon nodded. She asked for you. But please understand, she looks like Jisoo, but the android body is different. She's learning how to control it. The Kims followed Xalon into a room that looked like a normal hospital room, except for the strange machines along the walls. In the center was a bed, and on it sat a perfect copy of their daughter. Jisoo, Sun whispered. The figure turned its head, the movement too smooth, too precise for a human. Jisoo's familiar eyes looked at them, but something was different. They seemed deeper somehow, as if they contained more than they should. Mom, Dad. Jisoo's voice sounded right, but again, too perfect. I feel strange. Sun rushed forward and embraced her daughter. Day joined them, and for a moment, they were a family again. You're cold, Sun said, pulling back slightly. The temperature regulation is still calibrating, Xalon explained from the doorway. The body will warm to human temperature soon. Jisoo looked down at her hands, turning them over slowly. These hands are mine, but not mine. I remember dying. I remember the pain. But here I am. She looked up at her parents. What am I now? Over the next few days, Jisoo learned about her new body. It looked human but was made of advanced materials that were stronger than flesh. She could process information faster than any human brain. She didn't need to eat or sleep, though she could do both to feel normal. Physical therapy wasn't necessary. Her body worked perfectly from the start. But mental therapy was essential. Jisoo struggled with her identity. Was she still human? Was she still herself? I don't have the mobility disorder anymore, she told her therapist, Dr. Yoon. The thing that shaped so much of who I was is gone. My movements are perfect now. Too perfect. Do you miss it? Dr. Yoon asked. Jisoo thought for a moment. Yes, it was part of me. Now I feel almost too capable. And people look at me differently. Not like they used to look at a disabled girl. Now they look at me like I'm not human at all. 1 week after the procedure, President Han visited Jisoo. Security was tight. The public still didn't know exactly what had happened, only that Jisoo had survived through advanced medical intervention. How are you feeling? President Han asked, sitting across from her. Different, Jisoo replied. But still me, I think. The president nodded. The Galactic Union is very interested in your experience. You're the first human consciousness to be transferred to an android body. I know. The aliens visit me every day. They run tests and ask questions. Jisoo smiled slightly. I'm still a science project, just a different kind now. You're much more than that, President Han said seriously. You're a bridge between human and artificial intelligence, between Earth and the Galactic Union. Jisoo looked out the window at the protesters still gathered outside. And between the people and the police, between those who trust our systems and those who have been hurt by them. The president followed her gaze. Perhaps, which brings me to something difficult I need to ask you. Jisoo turned back to him. Officer Park. President Han looked surprised. How did you know? My brain processes information faster now. I saw the patterns in the news, the way you've been protecting him from public anger. You want me to meet him. Only if you're ready, the president said. He's asked to speak with you. He's facing trial next month. Jisoo was quiet for a long moment. Let me think about it. That night, Jisoo didn't sleep. She didn't need to anymore. But she went through the motions of her old bedtime routine. It helped her feel human. As she lay in bed, she replayed her death in her mind. Her new brain could show her the memory with perfect clarity. She could see Officer Park's face, the fear and then the terrible realization. He didn't hate me, Jisoo said to the empty room. He was afraid. The next morning, she told President Han her decision. I'll meet with Officer Park. Todd Park had lost weight. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow as he was led into the secure meeting room. When he saw Jisoo, he stopped walking. The guards had to urge him forward. Sit down, Officer Park, Jisoo said, her voice gentle. Tae sat across from her, unable to look directly at her. I don't know what to say, he finally whispered. Sorry seems meaningless. Then don't say it, Jisoo replied. Tell me why instead. Why did you shoot me? Todd forced himself to look at her. I was afraid. I was trained to see threats everywhere. When you moved suddenly, I didn't see a girl with a disability. I saw a danger that needed to be stopped. He paused. But that's not good enough, is it? That's the problem. Jisoo nodded slowly. Yes, that's exactly the problem. Your fear was more important than my life. I know, Ta said, a tear running down his face, and I'll pay for that for the rest of my life, whether I'm in prison or not. Jisoo studied him with her two perfect eyes. What would you do differently if you could go back? Everything, Ta said immediately. I would take the time to see you, really see you. I would ask questions first. I would remember that my job was to protect people, not fear them. They talked for hours. Jisoo asked hard questions. Tai answered honestly, painfully. By the end, both had a better understanding of what had happened and why. As Tai was about to leave, Jisoo said, Officer Park, I don't forgive you yet, but I think I might be able to someday. Ta nodded. That's more than I deserve. No, Jisoo said. That's exactly what you deserve, the chance to become better. The same chance I've been given with this new body. The meeting changed both of them. Jisoo began to see her new existence, not as a loss of her humanity, but as an opportunity to see the world in a new way. She had a perspective no one else had, not fully human, not fully machine, but something new. Ta Park's trial was still approaching, but he no longer feared it. He deserved consequences, he knew that now. But he also had a purpose, to make sure what happened to Jisoo never happened to anyone else. And somewhere in the vastness of the Galactic Union, beings watched with interest as humanity tried to learn from its mistakes. Earth had shown its worst: fear, prejudice, violence. But now it was showing something else: the capacity to change, to grow, to become better. The resurrection of Jisoo Kim was just the beginning. 6 months passed. Earth had changed in many ways since the day Jisoo Kim died and was reborn. Today, she stood before a mirror in her quarters at the Galactic Union headquarters. The massive space station orbited a neutral point between 3 major star systems. Jisoo adjusted her formal clothes. She didn't need to. Her android body didn't wrinkle clothes or move them out of place, but old habits remained. Today she would address the Galactic Union Council, the most powerful group in known space. "Are you ready?" her father asked from the doorway. Jisoo turned and smiled. Her parents had come with her for this important day. They had supported her through her strange new life, even as they still grieved for the human daughter they had lost. "I'm ready," Jisoo said. "My speech is prepared." "It's not the speech I'm worried about," Sun said, joining them. "It's you. This is a lot of pressure." Jisoo hugged her mother. Her body was warm now, almost like a human's. "I can handle pressure better than anyone. Remember, I have backup systems for my backup systems." Her joke made her parents smile, but their eyes still held worry. Jisoo had become an important figure not just for Earth but for the entire Galactic Union. Some called her the future of intelligent life, a successful blend of organic consciousness and advanced technology. The Galactic Union Council chamber was enormous. Representatives from over 300 worlds sat in tiered seats surrounding a central speaking platform. Humans had only one seat in this chamber, while some older species had dozens. Jisoo walked to the platform, her steps perfectly balanced. She could feel thousands of eyes watching her, some human-like, others completely alien. Many beings were seeing a human up close for the first time. "Representatives of the Galactic Union," Jisoo began, her voice clear and strong. "I stand before you as something new. I was born human. I died human. I was reborn as something between human and machine. My journey gives me a unique perspective on what brings us together today." She paused, looking around the chamber. 6 months ago, I was killed because of fear and misunderstanding. A police officer saw my disability as a threat. This tragedy revealed deep problems in human society, but it also showed humanity's ability to change. Images appeared in the air around Jisoo. Protests, reform bills being signed, new training programs for police. Since my rebirth, Earth has transformed its approach to difference, not just for people with disabilities, but for all who are seen as other. But we want to go further. Jisoo gestured, and new images appeared. Advanced training simulations where people could experience life through others' perspectives. Today, I propose the Empathic Understanding Initiative. Using technology shared between Earth and the Galactic Union, we will create programs that allow people to briefly experience life as someone completely different from themselves. The chamber buzzed with interest. This was new. Imagine a police officer experiencing what it feels like to have a neural disorder that makes your movements unpredictable. Imagine lawmakers feeling what it's like to be affected by the laws they create. Imagine anyone being able to understand experiences different from their own, not just intellectually, but emotionally. Jisoo's eyes glowed slightly brighter. Earth will be the testing ground for this program. We have already begun with law enforcement. Officer Ta Park, the man who shot me, has become the program's most dedicated advocate. Todd Park sat in a small room thousands of miles away, watching Jisoo's speech on a screen. After his trial, he had been given a choice: prison or participation in an experimental program. He had chosen the program without hesitation. For months now, Ta had been experiencing life through simulations based on real people's experiences. He had felt what it was like to have Jisoo's mobility disorder. He had experienced being a black teenager viewed with suspicion. He had lived briefly as an elderly person struggling to be heard and respected. Each experience had changed him. The man who had fired his weapon out of fear was gone. In his place was someone who understood the cost of fear, the value of patience, and the importance of seeing people as they truly were. Now Ta helped design training programs for other officers. "This is how we prevent another tragedy," he often said. "Not with rules, but with understanding." Watching Jisoo address the Galactic Union, Ta felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. "The Empathic Understanding Initiative is just the beginning," Jisoo continued in the council chamber. "Earth requests full membership status in the Galactic Union, with all the responsibilities that entails. We are ready to take our place among the stars not as newcomers, but as full partners." The council leader, A tall being with silvery skin stood. Earth has been a provisional member for 30 years. Usually, we require a century of observation before granting full status. Why should we make an exception? Jisoo smiled. Because humanity has shown something rare, the ability to transform tragedy into progress. When faced with our worst mistakes, we didn't hide them or excuse them. We exposed them, examined them, and changed because of them. She gestured to herself. I am proof of this. I could have chosen anger and revenge. Instead, I chose to become a bridge. Earth is doing the same. We are not perfect, but we are perfectly committed to becoming better. The council chambers fell silent as the representatives considered her words. Then the council leader spoke again. We will vote on Earth's status. But first, tell us, Jisoo Kim, what else do you propose for your world and ours? Jisoo straightened, her eyes bright with purpose. I propose the creation of an intergalactic neurodiversity alliance. Across the galaxy, beings with different neural patterns and physical abilities have been marginalized. Their unique perspectives are lost. I will lead this alliance to ensure all voices are heard, all perspectives valued. The vote was taken. Earth was granted full membership in the Galactic Union. 3 years later, Jisoo stood before a new group, the first graduating class of the reformed police academy. These officers had all completed the empathic understanding training. Many had disabilities themselves, inspired by Jisoo's story to join law enforcement. Today you become protectors, Jisoo told them. Not because you are strong, but because you understand weakness. Not because you are perfect, but because you recognize the value of difference. In the front row sat Ta Park, now the head trainer at the academy. The man who had once taken a life out of fear now taught others how to preserve life through understanding. After the ceremony, Jisoo and Ta walked together through the academy gardens. Do you ever wish things had happened differently? Ta asked quietly. Jisoo considered the question. Her android mind could calculate 1,000,000 different possible outcomes in seconds. If you're asking if I wish you hadn't shot me, of course I do. I wish I could have remained human. She looked up at the stars, visible even in the daytime through the academy's special glass dome. But I don't wish to undo what came after. The reforms, the changes, the growth, not just for Earth, but for the Galactic Union. Sometimes tragedy is the only thing strong enough to break old patterns. Jisoo turned to face Ta. We can't change what happened. But we've both chosen to be defined not by our worst moments, but by what we built from the ruins. Above them, ships from dozens of worlds moved through Earth's skies, no longer visitors but partners. And among them flew beings of all kinds, some with bodies like Jisoo's, not quite machine, not quite organic, but something new, something with the potential to bridge worlds. The future isn't about eliminating differences, Jisoo said, watching the ships. It's about understanding them. That's what makes humanity worthy of the stars. Together, the girl who died and came back, and the man who killed her walked forward, step by step, into that future.